All right, so we will go ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone to today's webinar and session on financial aid for international students. My name is Dylan George. I'm the Associate Director of International Recruitment here at Hobart and Williams Smith. I'm thrilled to welcome you all to today's session. I'm especially excited to introduce Lisa Hosky, our Director of Financial Aid, who will be sharing some insights about financial aid and financial support for international students. Just some general housekeeping items. We will be getting started, and I'll turn it over to Lisa here in just a moment. But some general housekeeping items. We wanted to let you know that our Q&A feature is open. So certainly feel free to drop any questions that you might have about financial aid into the Q&A feature. We're going to try to keep it pretty general so that anyone on today's call will be able to, be able to utilize those answers. So we won't be able to necessarily get into specifics about your financial aid package at this time, but we're more than welcome. You're more than welcome to ask any questions that you have about, general financial aid questions and financial support for you as an international student. And I see some parents and some family members on the call as well. So welcome in everyone. But thank you so much for joining us. I am glad that you are here. And I will turn it over to Lisa to kind of kick us off and get started. So welcome in.
Hi, everyone. Like Dylan said, my name is Lisa Hosky. I've been working in financial aid for quite some time and have worked with international students throughout my career. Saying that, I'm going to try to do an overview of many of the questions I get, and then Dylan will be monitoring the questions as they come up in the chat. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, can you all see my screen okay? The costs? Okay.
Yep, looks good.
Good. So when we talk about the cost of attending HWS, I want to make sure you understand the difference between what you're billed and what you actually may pay out of pocket for other things. So tuition and fees, you will be billed by the school. You will be billed in the fall, for the fall and July, for the spring and December, as is listed on the table here. The total cost for tuition and fees are $68,414 a year. Food and housing on campus is $9,334 a semester, or $18,668 a year. And health insurance is required and is billed in the fall for our international students, and our estimate is about $3,700. Those are the things that will show up on your bill that you will have to actually send, after your aid is subtracted, you'll have to send payment for. Other estimated expenses that you will see in your award letter, but we do not bill you for, but we want to make sure you're aware of, is you will need to buy books and supplies to support your study. You can buy them at our bookstore, and that will go on your bill if you choose to use that method. Our budget allows for about $1,000 a year. That will be different depending on the classes you're taking. Some semesters you may be paying more, some you may be paying less. Transportation is an estimate that we use for all students. We know that you need to get back and forth from your home to the school. So we do put in an allowance for that. Personal expenses are things like if you need a haircut when you're here, you want to buy a pizza some night, again, not billed and could be variable depending on your habits. So we estimate that for the average student, that would be about $4,150 a year that you would want to be available. Again, they're just estimates, they're budgets, they're not billed. So if your transportation costs are significantly less, you won't need all of that. We are required to have a budget, so that's basically our best estimate of some of those other things. I want to stop there and make sure there's no questions on that the basic
I
concept. Should
don't
be
see
good.
anything. No, I think yeah, it's a kind of good just general overview. One of the things that I think is helpful to mention is when you do see your student bill, one of the kind of phrases or words that we use here would be direct costs and
Mhm.
indirect costs. So the direct costs would be everything you see on the left-hand side. So those tuition
Okay.
fees, the housing,
Mhm.
Food and housing, you might also see is called room and board. It's the same thing. So just some language there.
Mhm.
So those direct costs would be what you get an actual bill for. Those
Mhm.
indirect costs do apply as sort of like the total cost of attendance. And for our international students, why this might be important when you're kind of looking at the combination of direct and indirect costs, is that an immigration officer, when you're applying for your F1 student visa, will want to see that you have sufficient funds as a student, as a family, and that funds from the school, like scholarships, are helping to support you in your time here at HWS. So those kinds of total costs, an immigration officer wants to see that you'll have some extra money to buy books and supplies, and you'll have some extra spending money to explore the Finger Lakes region or to travel home to visit family on school
Mhm.
breaks and things like that. So I think that language is sort of
Mhm.
helpful. Um, so I just wanted to kind of point that out,
Mhm.
Lisa.
Thank you. No, I think
Yep.
that's fine. Um, the next thing I want to talk about, these are just some sort of points to be aware of. Plan on tuition fees, housing, and food to increase every year, 1 to 3%. Our board of trustees reviews that and makes adjustments accordingly. I think that's different than a lot of places, but I would estimate 1 to 3% increase each year. The past 2 years, it's been about 2.5%. Additional funding to cover that increase is very unlikely. The award that you get is the award that you get. It does not increase with the cost increase. And generally, you will be expected to pay for your food and housing. Financial aid will not cover those expenses. So if you get a scholarship, that's going to be applied to the tuition and fees. It's just some things to keep in mind.
Yeah, and housing for the most part is about the same across campus.
Mhm.
Meal plans can be adjusted. So based on your eating habits, we typically budget for, an unlimited meal plan where students can kind of, come and go to our dining facility as many times as they would like throughout the day. If you find that, maybe you only eat one large meal a day or two meals a day, you can always adjust your meal plan if you're looking at this from an affordability standpoint, or just your typical eating habits. So that can always adjust as well.
And Dylan, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the first year they're required to have the highest one, right? And then subsequent years they can decrease because we want to make sure your students eat well while they
Yeah,
acclimate.
Yeah, and I think acclimating as well, trying to find, your flow of,
Hmm.
college life, coming and going from classes and being involved
Hmm.
in, clubs, organizations. Maybe you're a student athlete, your schedule might look a little bit different than it does today. So, having that flexibility to even just go
Hmm.
into the dining hall and grab a quick salad or a quick snack, is always very helpful.
Hmm. Additional points to consider as you plan. The international health insurance is billed for the fall and only in the fall, so plan accordingly because your fall bill will be higher. It will include that approximately $3,700. It is mandatory. It's not something that we can waive. Um, and you will most likely be offered a work option in your award letter. They are limited in the sense that most awards are for $2,400 for the year, which equals a work opportunity of about 5 hours a week. If you are in a situation where your department that you work in has additional budget, you can work more than that, but you will not be allowed to do more than 20 hours a week if you're looking to use some of that funding to cover your personal expenses.
Yeah, and a couple of things to kind of note here. As an F1 student here in the United States, all international students are required to have a health insurance plan. That's
Mhm.
required across the US at any school. So it's required that you, as an international student, have international health insurance. Us, we do that service on your behalf. So you do not need to, as a family, go and explore, the number of plans that are available here, you will automatically be enrolled in that before you actually arrive here in the United States. So you know that, flying here and upon landing, you as a student and, your parents or guardians here on the call, that your child is safe and insured, should they ever need it. We hope that students never have to use their health insurance, but even for, the common cold or to obtain any sort of medication, it's a very good and accessible plan, and covers quite a bit. So that's one point. And then the
Mhm.
second there, Lisa made a good point. On an award letter where you would see, what scholarships or grant money you have been awarded, you might see that you've earned this $2,400 work study. International students on an F1 student visa are eligible to work up to 20 hours per week on campus. So that is to say, you are welcome to, work a little bit more. Some of our international students might have, more than one on-campus job, whether that's, in our library, IT services, here in admissions. It could be really anywhere on campus, but your student visa only allows you to work up to 20 hours anywhere on campus. So that's typically money. We say it's quote unquote like that food and fun money, right? It might not help to pay your full student bill for the semester, but it can help with paying for a plane ticket to go back home, to take a trip to New York City or go on spring break, right? So some of those hours that students work on campus help to cover those kind of indirect costs, right? So that's something we wanted to point out as well.
So financial aid and billing are separate departments. So we create the award letter that you've all seen. If you've gotten one already, that will list your scholarship and any need-based funding you qualify for. It's in your admissions portal. The way billing works is the bills are sent to you in July for the fall and due in the first week of August. That's the one that will have the higher health insurance or the health insurance that cost that will make it higher. Bills are also sent to you via email in December for the spring semester and are due the first week in January. Your financial aid that you received, that you were awarded, will be reflected in your bill. So if you have a scholarship, that's deducted from how much you'll be asked to pay.
Yeah,
But it's
Lisa, we do have
Mhm.
a couple questions in the chat
Sure.
about that. So, can you talk about sort of the process of, how a scholarship might reflect against a student bill? So, we have
Sure.
questions about like, does that automatically get applied?
Mhm.
Does it only go towards tuition? Can
Mhm.
you just kind of talk about,
Yep.
the process of what a student
Yep.
and a family might kind of expect to see on that first student bill?
So let's say you have a scholarship of $20,000 on your award letter for the year. $10,000 would show in the fall as a credit on your bill, and 10,000 would show in the spring. And that would be deducted before you were asked to pay anything. So if your charges were $30,000 for a semester, you would subtract that 10,000 and you would owe 20,000 for that semester.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
hmm And that's why it's important to remember that health insurance in the fall, because that's always going to be a little bit more. Um, okay. Method of payments that you can use. You can if you have a balance after your award, and all of you will, because we don't cover the housing and food. You can research private loans to help you cover your balance. We have a page on our website that you can look at. Most private loans do require a cosigner who is a citizen, but you can find some of that information there. Or if your home country has loans, that's something to look at, like Canada does, I know. That's usually by province. Uh, Methods of payment that we can accept can be found on our student accounts page. If you elect to use the Nelnet payment plan, which will take anything that you owe. So like in our previous example, let's say you're going to owe $20,000, and you can take that and divide that up over 4 months, for example, and then pay $5,000 a month. or 5 months, depending on when you sign. So you can use the Nelnet payment plan, but the bank that you use to pay it must be based in the United States because they pull the funding right from the bank account. Flywire or Pay My Tuition can also be used for international payments. Again, if you go to the student accounts page, if you just search for Hobart Williams Smith student accounts, you'll be able to get all of this information and read it more closely. Okay.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to note is, during like International Orientation Week, our International Student Success team will help you if you would like to set up a bank account here in the U.S. That is something that typically you need to be here in the U.S. in order to do. So, you can provide the bank with like a copy of your passport, and they will help you to kind of start like a student bank account so that you can manage your funds here in the US without worrying about foreign transaction fees, and things like that. So, for kind of your day to day, if you wanted to go into the city of Geneva and grab a coffee with friends, you can kind of use that bank account, throughout your time here. And then any of your bill payments could also come out of that bank account should you and your family decide that's sort of the best option for payment. So these are all options, and our student accounts office is happy to kind of figure out what makes most sense for you as a student. And our current international students as well, right? They are great resources and are happy to kind of be a sounding board for you and your family as to, how do you typically pay your bill? What are the fees that you typically see? Have you had good success with Flywire and things? So that's a pretty popular option. And Nelnet, as a payment plan, you can select, what makes most sense for you from a budget perspective to kind of spread out your monthly bills. So we typically see, students pay, in the month of August, September, October, November. That's pretty standard, just to help you with your budget as a family.
And now I think that's pretty much most of the information you need, and I'm happy to take questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lisa. I think our Q&A feature is open. I see that we already have one in here. So we will certainly welcome any questions that you might have, anything related to, financial aid, or paying your student bill. More than happy to kind of be a resource for you. So certainly feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A feature. I think one of the other pieces to kind of note, Lisa, if you could go back to the slide about paying your student bill. One of the big things that we like to kind of talk about, is that your student bill does directly reflect your ability to be enrolled here as a student. So as an international student on a student visa, one of the big things to note is you must be registered for the next semester in order to be a continuing student in status. So you will learn quite a bit about what it means to maintain your status here as an international student in the US. But I think one of the key things to note is you won't necessarily be able to register for the next semester until your bill is fully paid. So if you have an outstanding balance, so say from the fall semester, you won't be able to register for spring classes. So it's really important that, you and your family sort of talk about, how you'll help to manage your payments, whether that is through, lump sum payments or through payment plans, because our student accounts office will put a hold on your account and they won't actually be able to allow you to register for the next semester. That's pretty standard across the United States. And if you are not registered for classes, that is a direct violation of your student status on a student visa, right? So it could impact and have like immigration consequences. So these are all things that, we like to kind of talk about early on, to ensure that, you and your family sort of have a plan, so that you can continue to maintain your status, because it is pretty crucial. If students are not registered for classes, it's a violation of their status. And unfortunately, that might mean that they need to return to their home country, right? So it is sort of a pretty direct
Mhm.
kind of one thing equals the next. So that is sort of something we do like to kind of talk to students about very early on. And
Mhm.
hence why we're having this conversation here in February, so we can kind of start having those conversations with you directly. So just wanted to kind of mention that as well in as we're talking about, ways to pay your bill.
And I want to actually add on to what you were just saying, Dylan, because I think when students run into trouble, at least what I've seen, is not planning for that increase that happens every year.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to, I mean, if it were me, I'd probably estimate 2% every year, give or take, and just make sure that I had that money set aside to cover any increase in the bill that may happen. Because I do think that takes people by surprise, and it's always unfortunate if that does create a situation where the student can't pay, and then put their immigration status at risk. We don't want to do that.
So so we do have a question here about showing demonstrated sufficient financial resources, and that these funds need to be available to cover expenses for all 4 years of study. Could you please clarify the total amount that is required to be documented? So I can kind of talk about this because I think there's sort of two pieces to consider. The first one being that when you, as a student, go to apply for your F1 student visa, an immigration officer is going to basically look at your student bill, and then we'll also ask, can you show documentation that you and your family have sufficient financial resources to cover this year and this student bill? So back on slide one, Lisa showed like those total direct costs and those indirect costs, which equate to about $94,000, right? What the immigration officer will look at is, have you been awarded a scholarship or any institutional grant money? And then they will see what's the remaining balance. So let's say your remaining balance is $35,000. The immigration officer will want to see that, you and your family have sufficient funds to cover that and then potentially beyond it. It is at the immigration officer's discretion as to if you are showing sufficient funds before they can award that student visa. So our international student success team will kind of ensure that you are showing that sufficient financial resources through, bank accounts, as you mentioned, like liquid funds and assets. They will want to ensure that any funds that you are showing as a family are liquid and accessible, right? Typically, they can't see like investment funds because you might not have direct access to those investments without taking a deduction or, taking money out of that. So as long as that money is accessible to you and your family, you can certainly show those funds to the immigration officer. So it's not necessarily that you have to show all 4 years of being able to afford your education, right? It for an immigration perspective, they want to see that you can cover your student bill and that, maybe what you're showing is that you are on a salaried job or you have kind of a steady income and it's not just $35,000 in one savings account. And by the end of year one, that money is up, right? So they want to see that you have sufficient funds to be able to support yourself and paying your student bill throughout all 4 years. So you don't necessarily have to show that all up front. It can certainly help your case to obtain that student visa. But in general, they want to see that any money that you are showing is liquid and readily accessible. So I hope that helps answer that question there. We have a question about living off campus, and if that might affect the student's aid package, Lisa. Um,
Generally, I don't think many of our students are permitted to live off campus, especially in their first year. However, the budget might be slightly different, but we would still account for that. It's just that the food and housing would move over into the, other estimated expenses because you wouldn't be billed for it directly, but we would still allow that to be part of your budget. But again, remember, we're not paying for any of that with financial aid. So it would be just a matter of if you were using a loan to cover that, where it would make a significant difference with what that number would show.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a case by case basis. If you have like documented medical reasons to not
Mhm.
be living on campus, then you can certainly work with our student housing team and student life to apply to live off campus. But we do require all students to live on campus. It is guaranteed for all 4 years, so that is something to kind of consider about your student experience and what you're hopeful for your education here. Um, Another question, Lisa, do we provide any institutional loans to international students?
No.
Yeah, we do not provide any, HWS financial loans. There are a number of resources. I think Lisa had a slide on there about, searching for other ways to afford your education, right? Um, I would recommend taking a look at in your home country first and foremost a lot of loans to help cover any educational balance here in the US will require some form of like a cosigner that's a US citizen, meaning someone's going to help to take on that loan on your behalf. So that is definitely something to explore in your home country. There are some great resources out there as an international student. I would recommend exploring an organization called Education USA. Education USA is a great kind of resource for all international students around the globe. A lot of countries and some of the major metropolitan areas throughout the world do have an Education USA center that is available. They are just a great resource. They are typically, folks who live in your home country that can help you to plan your education process. Everything from finding the right college or university, which you're kind of all beyond that point, like you've already submitted all your applications, but they can help you in, preparing for your visa interview. They can help you when you talk about, financial resources that might be available. They have a lot of resources and have a ton of information about maybe you're going for your education in the US and you want to study the arts. Maybe there's some specific arts scholarship in your home country that can help you to kind of afford some of that cost of your education. So each country is very different. But I definitely recommend, it's a good starting point in your research for, what are some of those other ways to kind of help finance the remaining costs of your education. All right. So another question. So we were awarded a scholarship. Congratulations. That's amazing. We love to hear it. Can we apply for financial aid in addition to that? So I think one thing that, we didn't really talk too much about, Lisa, is, being able to kind of cover the remaining costs of the education through potentially like institutional grant money. Can you talk a little bit about, that process and, what that might look like for families?
So if you haven't already, I would recommend filling out the CSS profile through College Board. That is really the most accurate instrument that we can use to evaluate your financial circumstances to see if you qualify for additional need-based aid. But again, I want to point out you're never going to get additional funding for room and board for the food and housing. So any scholarship or need-based grant that you get will only apply to tuition and fees. So I think that that's it, but you absolutely can do that. And I think, Dylan, we have certification of finance or declaration of finance. What do we?
Yeah, the Declaration of Finance. Yep.
Yep, so there's a declaration of finance internally that we have, where you can actually work through admissions to document your income, and we'll use that as well. Or in place of the CSS profile, if that's the one you want to use. So you can absolutely apply for that. If you have anything on your award letter now that already says HWS grant, you've already been considered for it. So you'll have a named scholarship and then perhaps an HWS grant. You've already been considered for anything you may be eligible to receive.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things to note as to, Lisa has mentioned a couple times, like any aid that we are providing you through scholarships or institutional grant money is only applied to tuition and fees. The reason being is that anything over that amount, which would then help to cover like your housing and your meals, actually becomes taxable against the student.
Hmm.
So we really ensure that students are not put in that situation. We're currently in tax season here in the United States, and our international students are in a really good position because they are not up against, having to basically pay for, their meals and housing twice, right? So it does unfortunately become a taxable item,
Hmm.
and some students, might be in an unfortunate situation. So that's why any of that aid actually only goes to tuition and fees. So
That's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that, Dylan. I should have shared that from the beginning. There is
it's
a
okay.
specific reason for it.
And, I, myself and Lisa, we are not tax experts,
Hmm.
but it is something that, we are very familiar with. And so, yeah, that is just, you might be leaving today's
Hmm.
conversation with that question in your head and just wanted to kind of answer that. A question about financial support for first generation students. Do we have anything specific, specifically first generation international students?
We do not have anything specific for first generation international students. I mean, generally
Yeah.
we try to go out with the best package that we can for you. We want you here if we've admitted you, so we try to go out with the best package that we can between the scholarship and any need-based funding that you're offered.
Yeah, there is. We do have, it might not be financial support, but
Hmm.
there is. We have something here called the First Generation Initiative. Some more of that kind of personal support, academic support for students who might be first generation students. And there's a good cohort of students that are kind of might be looking at those same kind of support. So anything from, academic or study tips or just having kind of a
Hmm.
cohort model who are also kind of going through the same thing and understand what it's like to be first generation student. So we have a team here dedicated to help support you as a first generation student. So it might not help you to pay your student bill, but it's going to definitely help you to succeed here throughout your 4 years.
And I am a first generation student, so I completely understand, although not
Yeah.
international, so I guess that would be a nuance. But
Awesome. I see one more question in here. Is that the student was awarded a few scholarships. They don't fully cover what they need in order to be able to attend HWS. They did fill out the CSS profile, but they don't see that they have potentially received any aid in their scholarship offer. Lisa, can you talk about where we might be in this time of year in terms of, packaging students and
Mhm.
ensuring that, all students have something to kind of look forward to if they have not received that yet?
So most of our financial aid packages for international students are done. I probably have less than 10 right now to complete that just came in this past week or so. So some of that will depend. If you filled out the CSS profile, if you did it recently, it may not have been reviewed yet. If you've done it some time ago, um, you may have been considered and not been eligible to receive it. There is an appeal process that you can do, but any additional funding is pretty limited, and I'm sure that Dylan can send you the link if for your specific situation, if you, and that goes to a committee and we review any requests that come in, but it's not something like you're not going to get another $15,000 through that process. It's usually pretty limited.
Yeah. And Lisa and her team in financial aid really work super hard to ensure that, they're doing their best to meet as much need as possible for every single family. So based on the information that you have provided us through the admissions process and now as an admitted student, our financial aid team, the information that you provide in your CSS profile and or the declaration of finances will help Lisa and financial aid to build you a need-based financial aid package. So if you have not received something, it could be that you're still in processing. We are currently in kind of like our regular decision timeline. So if you were just admitted, it could be that you're kind of still in process. So if you do have any questions, certainly feel free to send me an email at any time, and I'm happy to kind of help explore your specific case. All right. Let's see. I saw a Farash charitable founding on the HWS website for first generation students, but I couldn't find where to apply. Um, Lisa, do you have information about that?
It is really something that's no longer available. It just probably hasn't been taken off of the website yet.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Um, and then another question. This is more so getting into more specifics about a specific student's case, but I'm
Mhm.
happy to kind of connect offline with you and Con if you have questions about housing. Um, so it sounds like you might be in a specific situation. So maybe we can connect offline about that one. All right. Well, our Q&A feature is still open, so if you do not have any other questions, I certainly want to thank you for taking some time to join today's session,
Mhm.
and thank Lisa for taking some time this morning for providing some awesome information. Again, these are typically like our most frequently asked questions that we get from students, so we're hopeful to kind of put it all into one conversation for you. And I'm so glad to see so many parents and guardians on today's call. As we know, this is a super important time of year and helping to make these important decisions for your students. So I'm happy to kind of stay on the call for a little bit and answer any questions that you might
Mhm.
have. But if you feel like, you've gotten all your questions answered, I want to thank you. And, we hope to see you and your students here on our campus this coming August as an HWS student. So thank you for joining. Like I said, I will stay on the call here with Lisa for a little bit and answer any questions in the Q&A. But if not, take care, and we hope to welcome you this August. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We have another question about where students can find the CSS profile. The CSS profile can be completed on the College Board website. The College Board website will have a direct link to it. It's also on our international admissions page. There's a direct link to the CSS profile. So if you have not completed that, for your application, um, we do accept the declaration of finances, but the CSS profile is definitely going to give our financial aid team a lot more accurate information. So definitely check that out on the College Board website. And then our last, another question, when would I be receiving the first bill? It looks like Lisa's already on the right slide. So you will get notified in July what is owed for the fall semester. And then your bill is due in the first week of August, which typically aligns with, right before orientation week. If you are enrolling in like a payment plan, you would only be required to pay whatever the first installment is of that payment plan. So that would be kind of and it will have all of your instructions and directions on, how to pay that student bill, where you can pay it, your login information, and all that good stuff. Does the aid offer include work study? Yes, it typically will, of $2,400. So you'll see that some students will see that on their student bill for those that qualify. But if you do not, you are eligible to work up to 20 hours per week anywhere on campus. That can be, in our fitness center, library, in a specific academic department. There's a ton of on-campus jobs that typically become available towards the end of summer as students are looking to come back to campus. And then the first week of classes and orientation week, you start to see a lot more job opportunities available throughout campus. So, right. Well, Lisa, I don't see any other questions, but I want to thank you again. And folks, thank you for joining today's call. We hope it was informative for you all. If you do have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to myself or our financial aid team at any point. But we hope to welcome you all to campus this coming August. And thank you all again, and congratulations on your acceptance to HWS. So, hope you have a good rest of your day, your evening, your morning, wherever you might be joining us from. And take care, everyone.